I'm going to be reusing the old, I guess you can call this the oil pump shaft or the distributor shaft, but the shaft that goes on the inside that connects the oil pump with the distributor. So this gear right here goes on a little gear that's inside. So this is what spins it, and it spins the distributor and the oil pump. So this right here, I'm going to be using some assembly lube from when I built my motor. You always want to make sure that you lube up parts that are metal to metal. You can see right there, it has made some scoring marks on there from the past, but it shouldn't really matter as long as I lube it up with some assembly lube. Put some on there, put some on here, and then we're going to also be putting some grease, a thin layer of grease on this gear. That way there is no metal to metal contact. Also, one quick thing that I'm going to be doing is this is the new oil pump, like I said. I'm going to be filling it up with oil and spinning it very slowly in order to get it to prime with oil. Make sure you got a fresh new gasket. You don't want to reuse any gaskets. Now the way you're going to align your spindle shaft with your oil pump is going to be with this little indentation that it has. So you see there's no other indentation anywhere except for that one. So that one is going to line up with this one right here. You can see right there. You can see that on this side there is a smaller half moon versus on this side there's a bigger half moon. So this is going to go into your distributor, which is over here. So if you look at it, there's a big half moon and there's a small half moon. It's hard to see. There you go. So you're going to want to line those up. Now right now it's not that important because you could still rotate this and it'll be perfectly fine. But you want to make sure to keep it like that for when you put it into the motor because it's going to determine your distributor timing on the other side. Now I'm going to be installing the oil pump, but in order to install the oil pump, you need to always make sure that it's at top dead center. So the way you can tell for this motor to be at top dead center is you could stick a zip tie or a screwdriver or something inside the spark plug hole and then turn the motor, and then obviously when it pushes it all the way out, you know you're at top dead center. But another way to tell is on the pulley there is a tiny little mark. I try to put pink paint on it since I had some laying around. Right there's a little like notch on the main crankshaft pulley, and the timing marks actually go on to the front cover with this little piece right here. So you can see I have it at 0 degrees right now, meaning it's at top dead center. There you go. But like I said, there's 2 top dead centers, so you could put it to 0 right here, but at the top it's going to be on the intake stroke. Another way to figure that out is if you look at the cam sprocket, there is 3 notches or 3 little half moons. There's 1, 2, 3, and there's not one in the bottom. If this one right here is on the bottom and there's no notch up here, then you have it 180 degrees out. The only way to fix that, is you turn your crank, turn it all the way until this comes back to 0, and then if you look, you should be back to on the left, on the top, and on the right. Now when you install the oil pump, you want to make sure that you're not moving it around too much and that the shaft doesn't move around on you and it stays aligned with the oil pump. Now once you got that in there and it's all aligned, it didn't move on you, then you can come over here and check. And the way to check is if you look at, sorry, I'm trying to get a light on there. If you check, like I described, there's a small half moon on the left, and on the right it's the big half moon. Here you can see this is looking straight at it. So 12 o'clock would be, I guess let's just call this line right here in the head 12 o'clock. If you look, it's slightly off 12 o'clock, which is what you want. You want it to be kind of like an 11:30, I guess you can call it. So slightly pointing to the front. You also don't want it to be aligned with these because then it would be too far over. You want it just right there. Once you get that, and slide your distributor in. Right here we have a new cap and we have a new rotor. So now we're going to be replacing this one. It's not in bad shape, but figured I'd replace it and throw a new one on there just for safety measures. Same thing with the cap. This one looks a little bit more worn out, as you can see. A new one won't hurt, and I'll keep these as backups in case these ever fail. Now that you put your distributor in, it only goes one way, like I said, because of the half moon. So you got to line up the small half moon with the big half moon. Once you get that in, you should be in here somewhere. Whether it's like this or like this, but it has to be somewhere in here, or it should be at least. Now, if yours aren't lined up with these bolt holes and you're way off completely somewhere out of the map, then you got to go back and check what you did wrong. But if you're good like this and you're somewhere in here like this, then you should be good. Now what you want to do is you have two. You have this inner one, which is for the exhaust, and you have the outer one, which is for the intake. So you want your intake to be pointing on your number one intake. Now that you got them in there, obviously you can see I didn't thread them in, but you know that they're aligned. Then you go over here and you try to find your, it's very hard to say, your intake one, which is the outer one. So the outer ones are the intake and the inner ones are the exhaust. So your intake one, memorize where it's at. So if we go down here, we're going to see that it's at the edge of this groove. Once we have this tightened down, let's say it's tightened down, it's at the edge of this groove. So you pop this back off, put it aside. Now we find that groove that we memorized, which is right here. And this is the center of your rotor for the intake side. So if you look at it right now, it's not aligned. It's somewhere out here. So the way to align this is you want to turn your distributor until it lines up, which would be right there. Like I said, back to where we had remembered that little piece. Want to center it with this, and there you go. So that would be your way of timing this. This is just a very rough start. Obviously, once you get this in the truck or whatever you do, you have to start it up, get it warmed, and once your motor is warmed, then you come back and adjust it with a timing light. But this is just a very rough idea of how to set your timing from the get-go. So obviously, once it's like this, then you tighten everything down, put your bolts in here, and there you go. And in order to advance it, you would have to turn it counterclockwise, and to retard it, you would have to turn it clockwise.